Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Poland is tightening the rules for foreign workers with new visa requirements targeting people arriving for employment from Georgia, Colombia, and Venezuela. Now, Warsaw says visa-free travel was being systematically misused for legal work and irregular migration. But the changes also raise questions about how employers will fill gaps in the labor market increasingly reliant on foreign workers. Now, joining us now is Sylwia K. Mazur de Araújo Correia, researcher at the Católica Research Centre for the Future of Law and a member of Team Europe Direct Poland. Good to have you with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Sylwia, let's start with these three countries. So we have Georgia, Colombia, and Venezuela. Why specifically these three? What has the Polish government discovered here that makes them stick out?
So explanatory is very basic. Together with the increasing number of migrants entering Poland and applying for permission, for job permission, there's also increasing number of abuses and misuses of the system. And it is extremely visible, especially in case of Colombian employees. Now, Georgian case is a little bit different because although their issue is quite similar, there's another one which points to the criminal organization, organized crime arena, and the fact that Georgians are also responsible for organizing transition networks around Schengen zone. So here we are having this criminal dimension. And then with Venezuela, Venezuela is a little bit of collateral damage to Colombia because the Polish government decided that the trends comparing with Colombia are quite similar. So although the numbers are quite low, yet, at least for people coming from Colombia, coming from Venezuela, they decided to also put Venezuela on the list.
Mm-hmm. And also interesting, because let's look at the scale of the problem here. You already kind of alluded to maybe some illegal work or migrant problem. How deep does this go? I mean, and how far back does this problem go? Maybe I can ask that as well.
So the absolute numbers are not overwhelming in any case, because the number of people that apply for a work permit from those three countries last year was less than 40,000. So as you can see in absolute numbers, then this is not something that can be overwhelming for the state. However, due to the reasons I mentioned before, the state decided to react. And just to be clear, this kind of action was very much legal in the light of European Union law and Polish law, because again, European Union law allows for people to enter Schengen area and then on the visa-free waiver, and then allow them to take part. I mean, it is up to the member state to decide if people coming under the free visa regime, if they can be hired or not. So Poland was one of those countries that allowed them to be hired. However, again, due to the change law in Poland last year, we had an introduction of provision that say that in some cases, especially on the grounds of public order and safety, government can decide that people coming from a given countries do need to apply for visa first and then enter the territory of Poland, only if they're coming, of course, for working, to apply for visa. So this is something that's supposed to, again, from the security perspective, it gives another dimension, because again, if you apply for visa, that means that you have to face the consul representing Republic of Poland. And there is this perception that this consul have a better chances of evaluate, like, what are your grounds for entering, if your intention are clear, if it's a genuine intent, and so on and so on. So here you have this extra obstacle for people that want to. So the labor market is not closed for people coming from those countries. However, they get one more, put it in a simple words, like one more box to be checked before they will arrive to Poland. They have to apply for visa, and only then, when they are on the territory of Poland, they will apply for the work permission, for the work permit.
Mm-hmm. Sylwia, you mentioned also the European Union and those Schengen regulations, etc. So how is this swinging? I mean, I don't want to assign the question of whose fault all this is, but how much coordination would you say has come from European regulations with how much has Poland been able to do on its own? Can it do enough on its own to really make sure this is taken care of? So where does the pendulum swing here? Is it a European problem? Is it a Polish solution? How do you assess that?
So again, in order to keep a single market and free movement of people, you need to have of course, that has to be regulated at the EU level. So that's why we're having at the European Union level, we have that regulation, and that's regulation from the 2018. And that regulation represents the list of countries and citizens of those countries can enter European Union usually for 180 days under the visa-free regime. That means that usually for the touristic purposes, for personal reasons, they can come, like I said, it is usually limited up to 880 days or 90 in some cases. So that's something that is being regulated at the EU level. But then again, it is still a competence of a state to decide how it regulates the labor market and the possibility of people staying on that territory. So in the same regulation, you have actually provision that states that member states of the European Union can actually name the countries for which they will demand visa, like the people coming under the free visa regime will not be able to get a job. So it's like both ways, right? So member state can decide that people coming under the visa-free regime, they can apply for job, or opposite, they will have to apply for visa in order to perform any kind of job. So there is a lot of countries, including Czechia, for example, including Bulgaria, including Portugal, that have actually introduced the obligation for people coming from those countries to have visa. So Poland is not the first country that is doing that. However, as you might remember from our previous conversation, there is more and more people coming, especially from Latin America, and they very often enter, for example, through Spain, and that allows them to remain on the EU territory, namely on the Schengen territory, so they can move freely. So that is why, again, here the Polish state, is still trying to remain some kind of a control of who can perform job on the territory of Republic of Poland.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Also, you mentioned a little bit earlier the topic of, or the word of security for a moment. We're looking at the labor market right now, but at the same time, I wanted to ask you in terms of, is this really about the labor market, about migration, or do you see also this as a policy very much focused on security? Is there a coincidence there also with the timing, what we've seen in the last few weeks also in terms of Spain and Ceuta? Are these things connected at all?
They could be. And what is kind of surprising is that the new act on conditions permitting foreigners to work on territory of Poland was issued last year. So the act itself was already enforced. However, only this month, the state has decided to introduce the government decided to introduce that regulation that bans people coming from those three countries to perform job under the visa-free regime. So here, as we can also see, there is an issue of the fact that regulation that bans those people coming from those three countries to perform work in Poland is a little bit, prepared in kind of a rush. I mean, there is a data supporting, of course, from Border Guard and so on. So in the explanatory note, we will definitely find explanation why the government decided to do that. However, again, it was done in a very quick manner, and it leaves a big chunk of people, big group of people, actually in a gray zone, because there are people that are already on the territory of Poland and they came under the visa-free regime, and currently they are waiting for the permission for work permit in voivodeship office, depending on the place where they live, and they still do not have that work permit. So as you can see, they will suffer because they came to Poland, they were recruited probably their employee has somehow bear the cost of bringing them to Poland and so on. And if their work permit is not ready before the 22nd of August, when the regulation is entering into force, those people will be probably sent back. Mm-hmm. So as you can see, in this case, government has forgotten let's put it like this, about this kind of people. And then again, it affects employees.
Yeah.
So there are also like another issues increasing then, and especially the employees organizations are very vocal about the rapidness and the fact that, again, it was not prepared the way you should expect from the government.
Yeah, really quickly on that, we're short of time, but practically as well, you alluded to employers, so businesses in Poland. What does practically mean? Does this mean it's harder now to find people? How does the market going to react to that? Just quickly, please.
Absolutely. We just don't have an open conversation with the general public about how important migrants are for our labor market and for our social system. So even the case that 460 billion of Poland's GDP is actually accounting from foreign nationals, that should tell you something. So again, what we need is an open debate, because here you could observe that general public was, for example, surprised. Oh, so those people could come without having visa and they could perform job? Yes, they could. So as you can see, the level of knowledge about the general rules is quite low. And then again, because the issue is so politicized, government is, I get a sense, is trying to avoid any kind of open conversation about how our future migration policy should look like.
All right, so and I know we've discussed this before, so another layer, and I'm pretty sure we'll discuss it again in the near future. Thanks so much for that. Really appreciate all those insights. That was our guest here with us, Sylwia K. Mazur de Araújo Correia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sasha.
And thank you for joining us here on World Talks, but do stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.